Welcome to the Hidden Truth Stories channel. Today, we're diving deep into an unexplored historical mystery. The air around Her Majesty's Prison Gartree, deep in the rolling, unassuming heart of Leicestershire, England, doesn't carry the salt spray menace of Alcatraz or the stifling jungle heat of Devil's Island. Instead, it holds a quiet, insistent chill, a dampness that seeps not just into the modern concrete walls of its maximum security wings, but into something far older, something buried beneath the immaculate lawns and razor-wire fences. We all know Gartree's modern history, the high-profile inmates, the relentless state-of-the-art surveillance, the fact that it was, for decades, considered Britain's most secure inland fortress, a modern rock of granite and steel. But for Elias Thorne, an American geophysicist and architectural historian specializing in liminal spaces, places where modern structures abruptly interrupt ancient landscapes, Gartree's true significance lay not in its prisoners, but in its location. Elias wasn't drawn by the whispers of the great train robbers or the notorious Cray twins. He was drawn by the faint, almost musical hum of the land itself, a specific, low-frequency electromagnetic anomaly he'd picked up from satellite data, centered precisely beneath the prison's sea wing, the unit reserved for the longest-term, highest-risk inmates. Elias had secured a research grant under the innocuous title of A Study of Subsidence and Geotechnical Stability in Post-War UK Correctional Facilities. His true mission, however, was born from a cryptic entry in an 18th-century cartographer's journal he'd found in a forgotten Massachusetts archive. The entry, written by an exiled scholar fleeing religious persecution, described a site in the English Midlands, an inland hill known locally by a forgotten name, the Watchman's Cairn. The scholar claimed this cairn was not a burial mound, but a kind of celestial alignment marker, a node in a vast, prehistoric network established long before the Romans arrived, a place where the barrier between the mundane world and a certain powerful energy was thinnest. The journal warned that this site had been intentionally buried, concealed beneath earth, and then stoned by a shadowy order dedicated to maintaining the great sleep of the land. Elias theorized that Gartree Prison, built in the 1960s with a foundation that drove deep into the earth, was unintentionally anchored directly into this ancient focal point, an architectural accident that turned a secure facility into an unintended, modern containment system. His initial structural assessments within Sea Wing felt sterile, the air smelling only of disinfectant and stale, contained menace. Yet, beneath the polished linoleum, his specialized portable magnetometers screamed a different story. The readings were staggering, a swirling, localized vortex of magnetic flux that should only be found near massive, high-powered industrial generators or specific geological fault lines, neither of which existed in this placid corner of the countryside. This wasn't a natural anomaly. It was a vast, controlled energy source, and the prison was sitting directly on top of it. One evening, deep in the facility's rarely accessed utility tunnels beneath Sea Wing, Elias found the first physical proof. These tunnels, hand-dug decades before the main prison was completed, snaked through the bedrock. He noticed that the older stone walls were not simply reinforced with modern brick. They incorporated huge, smoothly carved blocks of a dark, non-native rock, likely granite, mortared with a substance that stubbornly resisted his chemical analysis. Etched faintly into one of these granite blocks, beneath layers of grime and calcium deposits, was a symbol, a spiraling helix contained within a perfect circle, the ancient sign of the Watchman. This discovery propelled Elias into a historical deep dive. He learned that the Gartree area, while peaceful now, was historically notorious for local folklore centered around the strange lights, and the feeling of being watched, reported by shepherds for centuries. He cross-referenced his magnetic data with historical accounts of inexplicable psychological distress and violent outbursts among inmates in C-Wing during the 1970s and 80s, periods when the magnetic readings seemed to peak. The most persistent, disturbing rumor amongst the guards was of a singing that could sometimes be heard echoing faintly through the ventilation shafts in the dead of night, a sound described not as music, but as a low, almost subsonic hum that left listeners feeling profoundly disoriented and exhausted. Elias theorized that the ancient structure beneath Gartree was a gigantic, subterranean harmonic resonator, designed not to generate energy but to dampen it, to put the land's natural energetic pulse into a state of slumber, the Great Sleep. The granite blocks were merely the exposed top layer of a vast, dome-like structure. The modern prison, with its heavy foundations and constant vibration, was inadvertently disturbing this delicate harmonic balance. The singing was the ancient structure's mechanism of rest trying to reassert itself against the noise of the 20th century. The intense magnetic flux was the resulting energy bleed, and the psychological impact on the inmates, already strained, was the subtle influence of a vast, sleeping consciousness momentarily stirring. The highest security wing wasn't trapping men. It was built over the prison that was trapping a force. Driven by a mix of scientific curiosity and profound dread, Elias determined to find the true center of the ancient site. He calculated the source of the magnetic vortex to be 30 feet directly beneath the floor of Cell 4B, C-Wing, the very cell infamous for housing the most unstable, violent inmate the prison had ever seen. A man who had ended his life there after reporting visions of cold, flowing light emanating from the floor. Obtaining permission to drill in C-Wing was impossible, so Elias devised a plan utilizing the utility tunnels. Over several nights, working meticulously with quiet, handheld archaeological tools, he cleared away the mortar from the ancient granite block bearing the Watchman's symbol. He discovered that the block was not structural, but a keyed entrance. With a final, gentle leverage from a specialized jack, the block shifted inward with a dry, dusty sigh that filled the tunnel. The air that rushed out was clean, cool, and smelled of ozone and forgotten earth, utterly different from the musty tunnel air. He descended into a dark, circular chamber, its walls carved from the natural bedrock and lined with the same obsidian-like granite he'd found earlier. In the center lay a vast, shallow depression, the true Watchman's cairn, filled not with relics or gold, but with millions of tiny, geometrically perfect pebbles, each one humming faintly with residual magnetic energy. Above the cairn, suspended almost miraculously without visible support, floated a single object, a crystalline lattice perfectly cubic, roughly 2 feet on a side, slowly rotating, bathed in its own faint, pulsing light, the source of the magnetic vortex and the cause of the singing. This was the harmonic key, the device that controlled the Great Sleep. As Elias cautiously approached, the faint pulse intensified and a series of deep, resonating clicks emanated from the crystalline cube. He realized the cube wasn't simply a machine. It was a complex data storage unit, absorbing and reflecting the energy of the land, maintaining the balance. But its rotation was slowing, its light flickering. The constant, intrusive noise and pressure of the modern prison above, the footfalls, the locks, the generators, were systematically throwing the key out of alignment, causing the instability he had detected. The prison wasn't just disrupting the sleep, it was slowly breaking the ancient lock. Elias, armed only with the cryptic warnings from the 18th century journal and his knowledge of electromagnetism, understood his task. He wasn't there to steal or uncover a treasure. He was there to fix a failure of containment millennia in the making. He noticed a series of small, shallow indentations etched into the granite floor surrounding the cairn, mirroring the pattern of the symbol on the entrance block. He pulled out a series of specialized, non-metallic ceramic rods he had brought, carefully placing them into the indentations, creating a precise circuit. He then used a small, low-power magnetic induction field generator, again, cleverly disguised as part of his geotechnical kit, to gently introduce a counterfrequency into the circuit. He wasn't fighting the energy, he was retuning it. The moment the induction field locked into the ancient circuit, the clicking of the harmonic key stopped. The cube's rotation immediately smoothed out, accelerating slightly, and its faint light steadied into a soft, unwavering green. The deep, ambient hum of the chamber deepened into a rich, soothing thrum, the true sound of the great sleep. A wave of profound, dreamlike calm washed over Elias, chasing away the metallic taste and the restless anxiety the tunnels had carried. He stayed there for an hour, ensuring the system was stable, a solitary, modern-day watchman tending to a prehistoric clock, buried beneath a British maximum security prison. He ascended, replacing the granite block, smearing the seams with an aged-looking synthetic mortar, leaving no trace of his intrusion. He completed his study, his final report noting only a need for minor, non-invasive foundation stabilization. Gartree Prison continued its operation, unaware that its security was not maintained solely by its steel and concrete, but by a delicate, ancient harmonic field, humming softly 30 feet below its most notorious wing. Elias Vance left England, taking only the memory of the green light and the knowledge that HMP Gartree, the inescapable inland fortress, was merely a secondary lock, inadvertently placed atop the greatest, most mysterious prison ever built, the one that held the ancient energy of the land itself in a state of tranquil, undisturbed rest. The irony was palpable, the truth safely buried once more beneath the routine, relentless discipline of the 20th century penal system. The subtle shift in the Earth's energy, imperceptible to all but the most sensitive equipment, was the only lingering echo of the night the watchman's key was reset. This mysterious journey ends here, but stay tuned for more untold stories in our next video. Subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you don't miss any new stories. Thank you, and see you again.